to drive talent outcomes at your organizations?
You know, Brent, as I reflect on the theme of this year's event, pulling together, I can't help but think about our own particular journey, how we were pulled apart and then pulled back together.
This is true. So for those of you not in the know, once upon a time, Kimberly and I used to sit next to each other on the 10th floor of 1201 Wilson Boulevard in Arlington, Virginia. However, when we said our goodbyes on the evening of March 10th, 2020, I don't think either one of us realized that the next time we would see each other in person would be yesterday.
This is true.
So this theme of pulling together, it applies not only to all of you, but also to the two of us.
Absolutely. So I am excited to share the stage with you today, Brent, as we paint a vision for the future for these best-in-class HR leaders so that they can plan and prepare for the road ahead. Why don't I go ahead and get started, and then I'll turn it over to you?
You got it.
All right. Well, to paint this vision of the future, I really need to start by laying a little bit of context. So here is a person, a representation of one anyway, an employee. And we have lots of them. And what is one of our core roles within HR? It is to bring all these employees together to form an organization, with the goal being to ensure that the collective assembly is greater than the sum of the individual parts. And from the earliest research, this was the basic idea and purpose of an organization. Now, it used to be that we came together as an organization with our employees coming into our office buildings, right? But now, in the past couple of years, we are coming together as an organization with our employees working from all sorts of different locations, some from home, some from our office buildings, some from a shared workspace, even maybe from a coffee shop. And so what we are seeing is that the definition of organization be challenged. But not just that, the employees who comprise our organizations, they've also been challenged. They've experienced a whole lot of disruption over the past year. I mean, you name it. They've been hit by COVID. They've had to switch to remote and hybrid work. They're experiencing a cost of living crisis due to inflation. And the list goes on and on. And we could probably spend the next 45 minutes just talking about all the disruption that our employees have been experiencing over the past couple of years. But what I'd like to do instead is talk about some of the implications of this disruption and what it means for the work that we do in HR. First thing to note is that turnover is going to be higher into the foreseeable future to the tune of about 20%. In the remote hybrid world, barriers to job switching are as low as they've ever been. And so there's more opportunities. More opportunities equal more churn. And this increased churn is creating an environment where employees just don't know who they're working with anymore. Fragmentation. But not just churn, the world is becoming more remote and hybrid. 81% of employees who can do their jobs remotely or in a hybrid fashion will do so going forward. And what this means is more interactions in the digital world. Now, there are so many wonderful things about the digital world, right? We benefit from it every day, so I'm certainly not here to poo-poo the digital world. But what I am trying to communicate is that there are some real negative implications for employees. We know employees tend to feel less connected. They tend to feel more isolated, more alone. Simply put, the hybrid world is causing fragmentation at a time when we are less likely to have those strong connections with each other. Levels of trust have fallen. Only about 2 out of 5 employees believe that their organizations, their managers, their leaders have their best interests in mind. 2 out of 5. And we certainly know as the level of trust erodes, Organizations fragment. Employees are also in a world of digital toggle. Think about this. We spend almost 10% of our time just opening, closing, and switching between different technology applications. And I got to tell you this. If there was one piece of data in this entire research run that had me with my eyebrows up, it was this one. But then I thought about my typical morning. I open up my laptop, I log onto my VPN, I open up an app to get a code to finish that process. I open up my calendar, my CRM. I notice I have some team messages. I click into one of them. There's a link to an article. I click on that link. Now I'm in my browser. And then I notice that Google Doc that I didn't finish the night before. So I switch into that. Folks, that's all in, I don't know, like the first 5 to 10 minutes of my morning. On average, employees are having 1,200 of these transitions a day. And you know what that means? That means they are diverting time and energy away from that deep work, the work that moves business building initiatives forward. Now, when you look at these stats, any one of them is troubling on their own, but taken together, they paint a troubling picture of fragmentation. Employees fragmenting from each other, employees fragmenting from their organizations, and employees fragmenting from their work. And these stats don't just feel bad, though they do. They have some real troubling talent implications. When we looked at employees who are feeling fragmented, this is what we found. 57% less likely to be a high performer, 83% less likely to be on a highly collaborative team, and 68% less likely to stay at their organizations. Raise your hand if right now your organization is experiencing attrition concerns. That's a lot of hands. This is real. When you consider the reality of work and life today, our employees are being pulled apart. And our job, our mandate, is to pull them back together. Not necessarily to prevent the forces of fragmentation, but to lead and design our organizations in such a way that we can overcome them in order to push ahead so we can accomplish new and important, different in kind things, so we can harness the full potential of our workforce. Folks, this is our imperative. And we have a simple but powerful idea about how to deliver on this imperative. In a world that is more digital and technology enabled every day, we need to bring our employees back together into a new type of organization, a human organization, an organization that is designed for and supportive of the realities of what it means to be human. So to figure out, well, how do we create a more human organization? We decided to turn to the anthropologists. And we asked this question of them. Why did early humans, why did they ever come together in the first place? And our thinking was that we could apply those lessons to our modern day organizations. And we discovered there are a few theories out there. And one of them is that people came together when we created communication. And cave paintings are an example of this. And so we thought, well, maybe communication defines getting humans together. And if this is true, then perhaps we just need more and better communication. Now, I don't know about you, but the thought of waking up to more emails, more Teams messages, more video calls, makes me feel, oh, so connected? Unsurprisingly, this isn't the key. So if it isn't more communication, maybe it's better tools. We know early humans used tools to specialize in different types of work, and that enabled them to trade with each other. And the modern day equivalent would be more collaboration tools to help our employees thrive in today's digital hybrid world that we were in. But then we thought about that too. And we said, tools, they're effective. They help us execute tasks. But do they help us build relationships? Do they help us build connections? And because this is a circle of trust, a big circle of trust, I gotta tell you, we were stuck. We didn't know what brought humans together until we heard a story about a femur. Yes, a femur. And specifically, a story about a broken femur. And even more specifically, a story about a broken femur that was healed. The story is said to be from the famous anthropologist Margaret Mead, and as it goes, she talked about a broken and a healed femur. And this is what she said. Those early humans, if they were to break their femur, they would be left to die or be eaten by a wild animal. But the fact that she wasn't referencing a fossil of a broken femur, but a healed one, what it shows is that someone or a group of someones took the time to care for this person, to have them heal. So what's clear from this story is that what defines a human caring organization is not whether we have more communication or better tools. It's about whether we care for each other. Let me say that again. Whether we care for each other. The best, most human organizations are defined by not only how we enable our employees to be their best, but how we care for them through their worst. So what does a human organization that cares for its employees, what does that look like? We're Gartner. You all know what we love, right? Can somebody tell me? What do we do? Research, absolutely. We ran some research. We ran focus groups. We interviewed business leaders. We surveyed thousands and thousands of employees. And we identified 3 things that define the human caring organization. 3 things that HR leaders, all of you, absolutely need to be focused on to build a more caring human organization. The type of organization that can overcome the forces of fragmentation that we've been talking about so that we can produce better business and talent outcomes. Can I share them with you? All right. A human organization focuses on ensuring that their employees are rested and not exhausted and constantly at their breaking points. So they engage in what we call proactive rest. A human, yeah, right, exactly. We're going to tell you about that. We've got some strategies for you. A human organization also creates intentional interactions, not just sort of random, haphazard interactions, but interactions where relationships and connections can be built. They also pursue patient growth. They grow the person rather than just growing the skills of the employees. Now, we'd like to spend a little time unpacking all 3 of these components for you and with you. So with that, Brent, can I turn it over to you?
Absolutely. Let's begin with proactive rest. Now, for many years now, we've been tracking the percentage of employees who report feeling stress and worry during a lot of the previous day. As you might imagine, it's a very useful barometer for the overall mental health of the workforce, and as you might guess, those numbers went up ever so slightly in the year 2020. 2021, things got a little bit better, right? We got vaccines, kids went back to school. It was a very happy time. Relatively speaking. But then 2022 happened. And as you can see, stress and worry are currently at an all-time high. This is how those forces of fragmentation feel. And at some level, I think we know this. After all, 93% of HR leaders told us that they are more concerned about burnout today. But here's the thing, our employees are not only stressed and worried, they're also tired. Employees now work over 9 hours of unpaid overtime per week. That is up considerably from the start of the pandemic. Heck, that is up considerably from last year. So what then is the net impact of that stress, that worry, and that exhaustion on our employees? Well, to answer that question, we turned not to the anthropologists, but to the neurologists. And from them, we learned that when we are stressed, the surface of our brains contract. Our brains literally shrink. Now, it turns out this is a self-defense mechanism, something that helps us absorb less pain. So on the one hand, it's a good thing. On the other, it also makes us more aggressive and less likely to absorb new information. So that's a bad thing. After all, we tell people not to operate heavy machinery when they're tired, right? Well, friends, our employees are exhausted, and we are asking them to operate the heavy machinery of our businesses every day. And I'm not saying it's all our fault, to be clear. I'm not saying it's all HR's fault. But at the risk of saying something very unpopular at the start of our week together, it turns out that we are actually part of the problem. Earlier this year, 77% of you told us that high-performing employees work longer hours than average employees. Now, to be fair, we probably don't come out and say that, right? That's not a bullet point in the job description. That's not part of the colorful, life-affirming poster that advertises our firm values just outside of the elevator bank. But I want you to ask yourselves, do you allude to it? Do you say it implicitly? Do your managers believe it? Do your rewards reflect it? Are you having really awkward, painful conversations with your C-suite right now about the promise and peril of employee monitoring technologies? So to help you out, we explored this in a little bit more detail. And we asked ourselves the very simple question, does more time working mean better performance? So to answer this question, we collected survey data from a range of employees across functions, industries, and geographies. Then we analyzed that data to see whether the number of hours an employee worked was ultimately predictive of their performance. And this is what we found. There is no significant relationship between the number of hours an employee works and their performance, even when we adjust for the many differences between those employees, industry, gender, what have you. Simply put, more time spent working has no effect on performance. So let's think about this for a second. At a time when our employees are experiencing record levels of stress and worry, at a time when they are exhausted, we are still telling them that they need to do more. That is not a recipe for success. That is a recipe for burnout. But it also begs a very natural question, right? What does improve performance? And I know, that's not a new question, right? There's like 1,000 different things that we do in HR today that are aimed at improving performance, everything from manager training to goal setting. But while those things are certainly important, I would argue that we need to change our perspective. I'd argue that we need some fresh thinking, some new ideas from outside the world of HR. So first, let us look to the world of competitive chess, where Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen reminds us that games are lost or won in the final hours due to mistakes caused by fatigue. Next, let us turn our attention to the world of tennis, where Naomi Osaka states, "I feel it is my duty as a professional athlete to educate my peers on the importance of taking recovery seriously." And finally, we turn our attention to LeBron James. He said, "I get my sleep. I get my rest. My mindset never gets to the point where I'm exhausted." So, where does that leave us? Right, the last time I checked, I don't think we had any chess grand champions or gold medalists in the room with us today. To be fair, I don't know that for sure. The CRM does not track everything. But what can we do in our own organizations to deliver on this idea of rest that fuels performance? Well, turns out there are a lot of really interesting ideas out there. First and foremost, the Home Depot. They now enable their call center associates to schedule their own breaks and lunch times. Salesforce has implemented a meeting-free week. Not a day, not an afternoon, a week. This is so successful, they have since repeated it twice. Not once to be outdone, LinkedIn has scheduled a week-long company vacation for each of the past 2 summers. WakeFit has declared 2 to 2:30 every afternoon the official nap time for all employees. And then they actually block everyone's calendar accordingly. Incidentally, I will be testing this one out for myself later today in the expert one-on-one room in the Swan. If you find yourself in the neighborhood, I will just ask that you tiptoe. Next, over in the UK, a group of 70 companies are in the process of exploring a 6-month trial pilot to test the efficacy of the 4-day work week. Now, that pilot's ongoing, but halfway through, 85% of participating organizations said that they were either likely or extremely likely to continue. So, regardless of where you land on this spectrum, one thing is clear. Rest is not the absence of performance. It is part of performance. So, how are most organizations delivering on rest today? PTO, right? And if folks are more tired or more burnt out, we give them more PTO, right? This is only logical. This is what a lot of organizations did, particularly back in 2020. And I think the rationale goes something like this, right? Our employees work hard, sometimes to the very brink of exhaustion, and we provide them the time they need to recover. Maybe not all the way, but at least a little bit. Now, we would argue that this is a very old school way of thinking about rest. What if, rather than thinking about rest as a way to recharge, we thought about it instead as a way to stay charged? In other words, rest should prevent burnout rather than simply helping us recover from it. That is what proactive rest is all about. So, what can we learn about proactive rest from the companies that are pioneering it today? Well, first, they provide their employees with a wide range of tools. Second, they encourage their employees to use those tools guilt-free. Last part's the hard part, right? Guilt-free. And finally, they ensure that those tools meet the needs of their employees. And, best of all, it works. When rest is available, accessible, and appropriate, we see a 26% increase in employee performance. The good news is that proactive rest not only boosts employee performance, it also reduces burnout. At organizations without proactive rest, 22% of employees are burnt out. Stop and think about that for a minute. 22%. That is more than 1 in 5. At organizations with proactive rest, that number drops to 2%. 2%. When employees are rested, they are kinder to one another. They're more connected. They're less likely to fragment. They pull together to accomplish bigger and better things. Let us next turn our attention to the second component of human organizations. They create intentional interactions. Now, when you have strong human-to-human connections, you are less likely to die from heart disease and stroke. Do I have your attention now? In fact, having weak social and emotional connections is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You are less likely to suffer from dementia. You are more likely to have a better functioning immune system. And finally, as if all of that weren't enough, you're also just more likely to smile. And I think that's nice. But that's not all, folks. These connections also boost collaboration effectiveness by 23%. So, human-to-human connections not only make employees healthier, but also better at their jobs. That's amazing. And of course, it also begs a very good question. How do we get more of these? Well, once upon a time, they just sort of happened. By virtue of the fact that we were physically co-located with our colleagues and we saw them fairly regularly, these connections simply emerged spontaneously. This is certainly how it worked for the two of us. So if memory serves, one night Kimberly and I were both working late. She was writing. I was supposed to be writing. And we just sort of struck up a conversation about the best way to teach children to be resilient. And we've been friends ever since. Also, yes, side note, this is what constitutes water cooler conversation at Gartner, and it's one of the many, many reasons why I love working here. Now, of course, in the world of hybrid and remote work, this doesn't happen. Instead, we've tried to recreate those connections. We've tried to recreate that sense of spontaneity by scheduling meetings. Arguably too many meetings. Some have even posited that the very reason why we need to come back to the office more frequently is because the virtual approach isn't working, and we've got to rebuild those connections in person. We would argue this is a mistake. This is a big mistake because it confuses quantity with quality, right? Remember, more isn't necessarily better. Take a look. Employees who spend more than half of their time collaborating are only 4% more connected with their coworkers. Moreover, only 31%, less than 1 out of 3 employees have a human-to-human connection with their colleagues. This is a dramatic decrease from 5 years ago. It is yet another negative consequence of that process of fragmentation. And we would argue that our employees simply cannot succeed. We cannot succeed as an organization without our employees connecting with one another. Allow me to present an alternative. Does anyone know what the adorable children on the screen behind me right now are doing? Right? Depending on the part of the world you hail from, you might call it Rochambeau, but I think most of us would call it rock, paper, scissors. So, Would you like to give it a try? No, I'm being dead serious right now. Kimberly, would you like to join me in the center of the stage? All right. First, we will need to warm up. So I want you to go ahead, rotate your wrists, flex your fingers, shake it out a little bit. Friends, this is critical. 2 things you need to know about our research on physical well-being in the year 2022. Number 1, never skip leg day. Number 2, always warm up. Now, for those of you not in the know, let me explain the rules. Because of course there are rules. Rules are how we organize the fun. Now, according to the ancient tradition, rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock. Please feel free to refer to the screen behind us if at any time during the next 60 seconds you become stuck. So, I would like to invite you all to turn to the person next to you and give it a try. Kimberly and I will demonstrate. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Okay.
Woo! I love it. Woo!
All right, friends. I believe we have once again demonstrated the single most important rule of instructional design. Right, once again, we had to go to like 7 there in the front row. Guys are in sync. Friends, we have once again demonstrated the single most important rule of instructional design that I learned in my brief and unimpressive career as an instructional designer. Exercises always take more time than you think they will. Now, if you won, let me hear you say, yay. And if you lost, let me hear you say, womp womp.
Womp womp.
Thank you. Kimberly, thank you much.
We got a rematch.
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 Very good. Not only have you just made a new and lasting connection at this conference, in the first hour of the first day, you have just contributed to a new world record for the largest gathering of HR leaders on this earth to ever simultaneously play rock, paper, scissors. So, what just happened? A question I'm sure many of you are asking yourselves right now. Well, we just created an intentional interaction, and it turns out there are 3 defining characteristics of those interactions. First, you had a choice. I invited you to play, and while many of you took me up on that invitation, some of you did not. Don't think I didn't notice. And that's okay. It's actually the point. We shouldn't force employees to interact with one another if they don't want to. See also Zoom happy hours. Second, you knew the rules of the game. And third, it was fun, right? We collectively took a break from work while we were already taking a break from work. So if anything, it was twice as fun. So, what would this look like in our own organizations? How can we use choice, structure, and levity to create more intentional interactions for our employees? Well, Dropbox surveys employees in order to better understand how they would like to interact at work, whether it's through happy hours, ERG town halls, or the occasional virtual game of Family Feud. Don't knock it till you've tried it. At Novartis, teams co-define norms for interaction and communication. So, when will they meet in person or virtually? When should they send an email? When should they start a Teams chat? And finally, Southwest knows more than any other organization on Earth. Okay, with the possible exception of Disney, Southwest knows that it's okay to have fun at work. They've built their entire brand around it, and they routinely rank as one of the best places to work. Friends, I want you to remember, when organizations help employees build connections intentionally, their employees are 5 times more likely to be on a high-performing team. They are 12 times as likely to feel connected with one another. These intentional interactions are a powerful way to counteract the forces of fragmentation that are pulling us apart today. As we've seen, they drive performance and collaboration, they make us healthier, and, lest we forget, they make us smile. And now I will interact once more, intentionally of course, with Kimberly to tee up the third characteristic of human organizations.
Thank you, Brent, and I'm serious about that rematch, buddy. All right, let's unpack the idea of patient growth, because right now, there is a serious disconnect between what employees feel like they are investing in our organizations and what they are receiving in return when it comes to growth and development. And it's driving a wedge. You can see here that more than half of HR leaders believe that their employees are less connected to their organizations now compared to before the pandemic. And certainly based on our research and the undisputed authority on all things current, TikTok, we think HR leaders are right. Raise your hand if you've heard of this concept of quiet quitting. Okay, that's a lot of hands. So you know that it started on TikTok, it went viral, and now the concept is nearly everywhere. Let me give you a sense of what it is.
My take on quiet quitting as a workplace well-being coach. I just want to preface this and say I don't love the term quiet quitting because you are not quitting anything. You are simply meeting the expectations and requirements of your job description, if you even have one. What this essentially is referring to are people that start doing less and less, aka the bare minimum, because they are either tired, exhausted, burnt out, or here's my take on it. Many people show up to work very enthusiastic. They are very engaged at first. They want to give feedback on processes. They want to feel heard in meetings. When this is never acknowledged by management, they are constantly being told what they are doing wrong instead of what they are doing right. They're never able to see the outcome of all the work that they put in on something. The requirements for these outcomes keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed. People don't want to do it anymore. Being valued, creativity, autonomy, and innovation are the top values of employees right now. So yeah, I agree. It makes sense, and I don't love the term.
Well, there you have it. She didn't hold back at all, did she? She really broke it down. So there's just this sense that employees are less likely to be committed to our organizations, less likely to go above and beyond the call of duty. And this isn't just a TikTok fad. And this isn't quitting in place or slacking off, those issues that we've addressed in the past through our performance management process. This is not a performance management issue. This is a value proposition and loyalty issue. Take a look at this data here. In this chart, we are looking at the employee's willingness to change their behavior to support organizational change. And we are comparing 2016 to now. And you can see that employees are half as likely now to be willing to change their behavior to support their organization. I mean, look at that drop. That is huge. That is a precipitous drop. Quiet quitting is real, and we see it here in the data. Employees are simply less willing and less loyal. And one of the common approaches that we typically take to earn more loyalty is we invest in employee development, right? We look to grow employees' job skills to make them more employable. And this still works, right? When we do this, we strengthen the bonds between employees and their organizations to the tune of about 20%. So we do improve their loyalty. But that was then, and this is now. It's a different world out there, folks. In the past couple of years, employees have been doing some serious reflecting, some serious soul searching, and 65% of them tell us that they are now reconsidering the role of work in their lives. Their families, their hobbies, their communities are relatively more valued now than they have been in the past. So employees are questioning, why should I continue to go above and beyond the call of duty when my organization is not willing to meet me part of the way? When my organization doesn't even see me as a human being? It used to be that seeing workers as humans was a bonus, right? The hallmark of the exceptional organization. You know, one of those organizations touted as the best places to work. Now, 82% of employees demand that their organizations see them as people, not simply workers. Folks, employees are engaging in quiet quitting not because they want to, but as a reaction to the fact that their employers don't see them as people. They are not investing in them as people. So here's the fix. Rather than just role-focused development, it is more effective to expand development to grow the person, not just the employee. And when I talk to clients and I talk about growing the person, they say, Kimberly, what does that mean? What does it mean to grow the person? It means that we also support their emotional development, their mental development, their social development, their spiritual development, their physical development as well. And that's what we're seeing the best organizations do. And when they do that, you can see the data here demonstrate that the results are far superior when it comes to building loyalty. But here's the thing. When it comes to this more broad-based development, we have to think about it a little bit differently than we do our traditional based development. The first thing that we have to embrace is that it takes longer for human growth to occur. Now, to put this in perspective, I'd like to show you the time that it takes different mammals to reach adulthood. Mice, a few weeks. Dogs, a few months. Horses, just over a year. Human beings, 15 to 17 long years. For all my parents out there, hang in there, hang in there. The only mammal that takes longer to reach adulthood is the bowhead whale, but they also live to 250 years old, so humans still went out on this one. What I'm just trying to demonstrate is that it takes time for humans to mature. Not to learn basic skills, that can happen quickly, but to really mature, to understand their strengths, their weaknesses, to experiment with their passions and interests, to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and apply them. And if you've ever started a meditation practice, then you know personally it is way easier and way quicker to learn Excel. I'm just saying. When we're asking employees to grow like humans and not just build skills like workers, we have to be patient. Also because broad development takes some experimentation. We know how to build skills, right? L&D leaders have been doing that a long time. Shout out to my L&D leaders out there. Yeah. But development as a person is more experimental. We have to be willing to explore different things, to deploy different development options, but it also requires employee reflection and application for it to really stick. And we're encouraged to see that there are some organizations that are beginning to adopt this strategy of patient growth. Let me share some examples here. DSM has opened up a learning platform which allows their employees to learn nearly anything, including music. And their philosophy is that all development is professional development. So having those opportunities for personal development alongside skills-based development really helps to demonstrate their commitment to growing the whole person. AAA offers 40 hours of paid enrichment time that employees can use for personal development, well-being, and this is in addition to their regular PTO. Employees of John Lewis and Partners can apply for a charity rotation for up to 6 months. That's like awesome. What all of these companies have in common is this broader human development perspective that's enabling their employees to be happier, more content. And here's the thing, better workers at the end of the day. Simply put, employees who experience a patient growth, a patient approach to growth, they are twice as likely to stay at their organizations. Now, earlier I asked you to raise your hand if your organization is experiencing attrition concerns, and there were a ton of hands that went up across the room. 2 words, patient growth. When we look at this outcome here, this is the quintessential example of a win-win situation. It's a win for employees, but it's also a win for our organizations. Brent, we've shared a lot this morning. Let me try to pull this together. To build a more human, caring organization, we need to focus on 3 things. We need to have employees who are rested, and we need to be proactive in building that rest. We also must create intentional interactions, not just these random, haphazard interactions, but to design for those human-to-human relationships. And finally, we need to design for patient growth. We must shift from just building the job skills of our employees to building the lives of our employees. And when we do this is so exciting to me. When we do this, when we build a more human, caring organization, we are 4 times as likely to exceed, not meet, exceed our revenue and profit goals. Now, that should make everyone smile, which Brent already told us is a really good thing, right? Now, before you go, remember our mandate. We need to pull employees back together so that we can push ahead. So when you're thinking about how to overcome these forces of fragmentation that are pulling your organizations apart, I want you to think back to the story of the femur. That story of the broken femur. That story of the broken femur that was healed. And as we build a more human, caring organization, make sure that you are building that organization that enables your employees to be their absolute best, but that you care for them through their worst.
Friends, thank you so much for your time and engagement this morning and your participation in a truly epic game of rock, paper, scissors.
Woo! Thank you so much. Enjoy your Reimagine experience. We are so excited for all of your organizations and all that you're going to accomplish, and we are rooting for you, and we're here to support you. Take care, everybody.